Hi everyone, welcome to the second session of PC Working Group and the last session of the day. The note well still applies. Julian explained all the processes at the start of the meeting yesterday. It continues to apply. Please take care of IPR and all our policies, especially with respect to code of conduct as well. If you are in person currently in the room, please make sure to use the Meet Echo Lite client. There are QR codes as well. We will be using Meet Echo to maintain our queues. Please help your remote chairs to do that quite well. And make sure to wear mask. That is something that you agreed at the time of registering to the meeting. So please adhere to that. To all the remote participants, please make sure not to send audio unless it's your turn to speak, and use headsets to make sure that the audio is clear. Again, a reminder that maintain the code of conduct of IETF as per BCP 54. Just a continuation, we have Hari taking the minutes, so thank you for that. Please help Hari out. I put the link to the meeting in the chat as well. When you are speaking, please state your name. We have not too much of a tight agenda, so there is a discussion time. We will use it, but in case we overrun, of course, please use the mailing list and the chat for further discussion. So we covered segment routing, which was in part one of our agenda. Today we have then starting with stateful PCE, some new proposals on DetNet and NRP ID in PSEP. So these are the next set of presentations that we have today. Okay, so is Mike? Yes, Mike is here. Good. So let me pull up your presentation and let's start with our first presentation of the day. Mike, I'll be giving you just 1 second, Mike. I'll be giving you slide control, so you should have it now. You should be able to move slides yourself.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. This is Mike from Cisco Systems. I'm presenting the PSEP operational clarifications draft. So just to give a brief summary of the draft, there's about 6 points that we cover in the draft. So some of these points are basically informational and some of these are like normative. So I'll go through these 6 points. So first, and kind of very important, we introduced this optimization to the PSEP protocol where we make the PC request and PC reply messages optional. And this basically reduces the amount of messages that you need to send when bringing up the tunnel. Instead of sending 3 messages, you basically just have to send 1 message. So before you would have to send like PC request, then wait for PC reply, and then send the report. And now we basically simplified by allowing you to send the report. So we're not sure like basically why it was done that way originally, but it seems that a lot of vendors are doing it. So so this will be an update to the RFC 8231. Next point is we introduced kind of this terminology for what is a PSEP tunnel versus a PSEP LSP. And the tunnel is the entity that's identified by the PLSP ID / symbolic name, versus the LSP is an instance of the tunnel that's used for make before break. And the LSP is identified by the LSP identifiers, TLV. So just even introducing these 2 names is I think useful in other drafts as well. Third, we clarified that the PSEP association contains LSPs and not tunnels. I'm not sure if it was very clear before, but we just kind of stated explicitly. And it's still possible that a tunnel can be in the association when all of its LSPs are in the association. And it's possible that some of the LSPs may be in one association and some may be in the other, such as when you're changing from, when the tunnel is changing from one association to the other in a make before break fashion. Fourthly, we give some examples of various LSP operations that can happen, where we saw basically different vendors have like interop issues. So we just explicitly walk through many examples. Fifth point is we we clarify that how some objects do not have an explicit removal flag, and we saw some basically interop issues where an implementation would expect a constraint to be not removed if it didn't send the object. So say like it sent the LSPA object, for example, in one message, and then in the next message it didn't send it, but it kind of expected that the constraint was still applicable. So we explicitly say that if the object does not have an explicit removal flag, then the absence of the object means a removal of the constraint that the object represents. And sixth and final point is we discourage the use of the RRO. So the RRO is an RCPTE concept where like the RESV message will go back, or the path and RESV actually both go and collect hop by hop information into this record route object. And for SR, there's no such thing. There's no record route for SR. So basically, we're not sure really why these SR RRO objects were defined. And some vendors kind of mistake the RRO to be like a current, well, I don't want to say mistake, but they treat the RRO to be like a current path and the ERO to be like a desired path or something like that. And so, yeah, it led to, again, some confusion. So we just want to settle that by discouraging the use of SR RRO, because RRO is RCPT concept. And so here's some just brief history. So this draft was first introduced in IETF 110 in July 2019, so like 3 years ago. And since then, there was not much. There were some additions, but there were no fundamental kind of changes. So we got recently some good comments from Adrian on the mailing list, which I addressed in the latest version. So basically, yeah, I wanted to make this presentation kind of quick to give room for questions and comments. So basically, the thing with this draft is it has both informational and normative content. And I think that's fine. I saw quite a bit of other drafts, or at least a couple other drafts that have the same structure. So what I saw done is that they spell out which sections are informative and which are normative. Yeah, so we have kind of three options. Either we separate the different sections and say which two are standard track versus informational, or we break the draft into basically two drafts. So yeah, so basically I would like to request work group adoption on this draft. That's all for the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. First, any questions on the mic? We have time, so if people want to talk about the issues, we can do that. Otherwise, this question, which is right now on your screen, can also be answered. I see John in the queue.
Since you bring up the question on this slide, I guess I would have a mild preference for keep it option 1, keep it in a single draft and clearly separate the two kinds of content.
Yeah, that's same with me. Yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of hard to say what exactly is informational versus standard. There's not like a very clear line, so having it in one draft makes it a little bit easier than to have, you know, that content bounce between two different drafts. So I agree with you.
Andrew?
Yeah, basically going to echo the same thing. I meant to reply to the list, but Drew kind of raised those, you know, what is the way to kind of document this, whether we want to split it up or have one draft. And I really kind of see the operational draft as almost like a checkpoint on the, you know, the implementations of PC, with a lot of implementations now have kind of converged on what's being described in this document. And so since there is some updates and clarifications, and it is kind of that, you know, checkpoint kind of, in my, you know, from my view, I do like option 1 and keeping in the same draft and just describe which is doing specific updates versus which is just doing clarifications. And with that, of course, you know, since as an implementer, to get to this convergence with a lot of vendors, it's a really good thing. So I do believe we should adopt this. Thank you.
Yep,
Thanks.
thanks.
Andrew. Any more comments from anyone? From my point of view, my mild preference would be 2 separate drafts, but of course, like working group preference would take over. That's just me as an individual. And mainly because when I currently read the draft, I find like, you know, the separation is, as you yourself said, that this separation is hard to do. And that's why in a single document, I kind of found it to be a little hard, because we say an update and immediately we jump into an example, and then we start going into an example which actually doesn't change anything from RFC 8231, but is just explaining it in a much better way. I thought that if we do it in a single document, we should clearly find a good way to separate things, talk about, like, you know, maybe start with an update, as in like what are the normative changes upfront, and then go into examples and say that once this normative changes have been applied, now these are the set of examples which will clearly explain how things are currently functioning. So I will try to work with you guys and see if we can, like, you know, make this very, very crystal clear what is an update and what is just like, you know, just explaining things in a much better way. Like when you bring in terms like a PCEP tunnel, I think it is useful, but we should be clear that we are not changing anything, because especially for an external person, for an implementer, this is easy, but for an external person, I feel review would become harder if he reads RFC 8231 and then suddenly he comes here and say, oh, what is this term? How do I relate this term to the rest of the text in RFC 8231? So we have to be a little bit more careful with this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what I saw in other drafts is like they say in the beginning of the document, they say like sections X, Y, Z are informationals, and sections, you know, whatever else, ABC are normative. And that way, it's all kind of in one document. But I'm open to anything. Like if you know, whatever the work group consensus is, we can work with that.
I see Julian wants to have a word in. Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it seems that no one is interested in option 3, but we should probably take to the list the discussion between option 1 and option 2. I also have personal preference for option 1, clear separate for option 2. Sorry, so clear separation with 2 different documents is probably a clear way to proceed, but I think the working group need to discuss this more on the list, and we'll follow the consensus between 1 and 2. So
Sure.
I think we should move this discussion to the list. But clearly, there are interesting material there. The working group should work on that. So this discussion is rather an editorial split of the work rather than delaying anything on the procedure and the adoption.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mike. The next one is Giuseppe, right?
Yes. So let me bring up the new presentation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me also.
Oh, you are remote. I was for a minute not sure. I'll give you slide control. You should have it now.
Okay, I can see the slide. Yeah, we can. Yeah, hello everybody. This is an update about the PSEP extension to enable IFIT. So the draft has been recently adopted. As you can see, this is a 0.0 version of draft IETF, and I'm presenting on behalf of the co-authors. So next slide.
Pro. So you can move the slides yourself.
Okay.
It's in the bottom of the screen as well as arrow.
Okay. Yeah, just a few words about the background and motivation. So to remind the scope of this draft. So IFIT stands for In Situ Flow Information Telemetry, and it's just a name to refers together to In Situ OM that is defined in the RFC 9197 and alternate marking that is currently defined in these two experimental RFC, but there is also work to elevate these two RFC 8321 bis and 8889 bis to proposed standard. So the PSEP extension defined this document allows to signal these IFIT capabilities, and the IFIT attributes can be generalized as TLV to be carried inside the LSPA object. So we choose this option in order to be applied for all path types as long as they support the relevant telemetry methodology. So we firstly define the IFIT capability TLV as an optional TLV in the open object for the capability advertised. So we define in the flags 5 flags for now. So 4 for IOM and 1 for alternate marking. And in addition to the capability advertisement TLV, we define the IFIT attribute TLV that provides the, let's say, the configurable knobs of the feature. So, and this can be included as a TLV in the LSPA object. There are also in this case 5 different sub TLVs defined. I didn't put here the detail of the sub TLV since they were presented several times, but you can look at the draft. So in the end, there are 4, also in this case, for in situ OM and 1 for alternate marking. The IFIT attribute TLVs are carried, as I said, in the LSPA object and can be applicable to all path types. Of course, they are optional and can be considered during path computation and path setup in stateful PCE model. Yeah, just a few words to summarize the working group adoption discussion. So we still need to address all the comments since the suggestion from the chair was to publish the 0.0 version as is the last version of our draft. And then we plan to publish a new version in coming weeks to address all the comments that we received during the adoption call. In this slide, I just want to summarize the main comments and the main suggestions that we will address. So first of all, a clarification on the head-end support of the IFIT capability. So it is supposed that there are at least 2 nodes, of course, that at least starting and then the node which support the IFIT capability. It was also suggested to mention the example for IPv6, since for IPv6 both IOM and alternate marking can be implemented through an extension header, so by leveraging the PSEP extension for native IP, for example. Then it was asked to include more details about the relationship between the draft in IDR on SR policy fit. So it is important to highlight that both PSEP and BGP can be used to, for example, to instantiate SR policy. So it is reasonable to have the same IFIT mechanisms for PSEP and BGP as well. Even though, as I said, for PSEP, let's say the application and the IFIT attributes can be applicable to all the path types, not only to SR policy. Then, of course, the use of the IFIT terminology and the related framework will be clarified. And in the end, we had also several editorial comments from Adrian, and we will address also these comments to improve the readability of the document itself. Okay, just a few words about the next step. So, as I said, we plan to address all the comments in the 0.1 version, and we always welcome additional inputs and suggestions. So, thank you, everyone.
In the queue.
Ciao Giuseppe, this is Adrian Farrell. Thank you for staying up so late. I don't know if you, well, I'm sure you are aware that there was a draft in the Ops Area Working Group, a framework for IFIT that kind of ran into a roadblock and was sent to at least be discussed in IPPM. But nothing seems to have happened with it. And your draft here isn't making reference to that framework at all. I wondered if you see any relationship or whether it's safe to go ahead without a framework document guiding us.
Yeah, we didn't add a clear reference to the IFIT framework because mainly because it was not adopted, and because we also believe that with IFIT we can simply denote the two methodology in situ-IAM and alternate marking. And since we didn't mention the framework in this draft, we cannot omit the reference. But if there is consensus, I can also add the reference, because we also receive a comment that suggested to add the reference to the framework, even if this is only a building block of the whole framework. So maybe the framework needs to reference this document. So because this is only a building block of the whole framework. So we can add a reference, but it's not so. So in my opinion, it can be done, but it's not crucial. But can be discussed.
Yeah, hi Giuseppe. I think the term IFIT, either by reference or by description in the document, needs to be clarified, because otherwise, even when we call our TLVs IFIT TLVs, it should be better if it's very clear what IFIT really means.
Yeah.
So I think by some mechanism we need to solve this. There was one more comment in when I was browsing through the adoption call, was about MPLS. So has there any been discussion on that, like any change with scope, whether this document has SR MPLS in scope or not?
Yeah, you are right. You are right, and I will clarify that for now, because we didn't mention SRMPLS as an example, so maybe it's not. There is only a section, so yeah, we can omit SRMPLS for now. And the reference to in particular, I think that Greg was referring to the draft on MPLS that has not been adopted yet, so maybe we can just omit that reference. And thank you for reminding me. It's another thing that I have to fix.
Yeah, my thing is like just track it, because right now we have just adopted it. So even if the work is ongoing in MPLS working group, it's fine. Let's just track it. I think like, this scope, having MPLS in scope is important. We should keep it. Either we can decide later whether like, if that work is taking too long, whether we need to divide this into multiple documents, that we can handle later. But within the scope of this document, just keep track of the MPLS stuff as well.
Yeah, of course. I hope that they will find a solution soon, because for now there are different solutions on the table, and yeah, we have to follow also the discussion in MPLS, and hopefully they will finish before the publication of this document, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. And just a small reminder, like since you have documents in IDR as well as this, just from the start, take care of coordination, take care of like, the documents remain in sync. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So let's move on to the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have two presentations on DetNet. These are very early solution document. The work in DetNet is still ongoing. This is mainly for information purpose for PC working group. So let's start. And let me give you slide.
Thank you, Rudolf. And I'm Chuan from ZTE. My presentation today is the PSAP extension for DetNet bounded latency. So let's first discuss the requirement for the DetNet and the PSAP. In DetNet, it is required to consider the bounded latency for path selection to achieve the DetNet queues, such as a minimum and maximum end-to-end latency and the bounded jitter. As per IETF DetNet controller plane framework, the path should be calculated and established in control plane to guarantee the deterministic transmission. So the end-to-end banded latency constraints should be taken into consideration. And the IETF DetNet banded latency, the end-to-end delay bounds can be presented as the sum of low queuing delay bound and queuing delay bound along the path. So the queue mechanisms and the parameters should be determined during the path computation. So this document describes the extensions for TSAP to carry bounded latency constraints and distribute the deterministic paths for end-to-end path computation in DetNet service. And for the PSAP extension, first we proposed two metrics carried in metric object. First one is the end-to-end banded latency metric. The second one is the end-to-end banded jitter. The two metrics will be carried to request a deterministic path to meet the end-to-end banded latency. We also request a D bit in LSP extended flag TRV. So another PSAP extensions is we propose to extend the queuing information to distribute the path computation. How to carry the queuing information is not determined. So far, we propose to extend the queuing information structure to be carried in ERO, SRERO, or SRV6 ERO. But new sub-objects also make sense. We will consider that in another version. So last step, we would like to thank the comments from Doof in the mailing list. we will consider to propose new queuing sub-objects for PSAP and pair with the RSVPT signaling in next version. Under next version, we will list out the requirements for PSAP and get confirmation from DETLAT, and we will align with the terminologies of the requirements draft. So comments and the suggestions are very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Janos?
Hi everyone, Janos Farkas with Ericsson. As Dhruv mentioned in the beginning, we are in a very early stage of like extending the DET network to address newer requirements, and these are individual contributions. What we see here, from my personal perspective, very much ahead of where we are in DETnet. We are trying to come to consensus with the requirements, and then we have a lot of solution proposals on the table. We need to build up consensus on which way to go. And after figuring out the solution, from my perspective, it comes the encoding of what fields are needed and so on to meet the solution. As for the information between PC and the devices, the flow information RFC could be helpful as well, because that already defines the end-to-end delay budget and that kind of parameters required for DETnet flows. So that's already an input. But as for the queuing part, I think it might be good to wait a bit until the work is becoming more mature in DETnet. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you.
Yanis might have actually answered my question. From reading the document, I wasn't quite sure how PC learns the processing delay of the routers in the path. Is there another document somewhere where that information is kind of averaged out or published? Otherwise, I'm not sure how PC takes that into consideration.
Yes, the IGP advertisement for the load delay will be advertisement before the path computation.
Okay, it might be helpful just to reference that, and that way we know where that value kind of comes from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Lou?
Sorry, a little slow on the unmute. To add to what Janos said, I just want to point out that in the DETnet working group, we have a controller plane framework document that's still open and accepting contributions. It's a working group document, but it's not done yet. And if this work helps inform that, or anyone inside this working group has material they'd like to either add or see covered, for example, the last question, the answer to the last question, it'd be great to bring that into that document. Just send to the list any contribution you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
Any more comments? Yeah, thank you. My suggestion, which I mentioned in the mailing list as well, I think to all the solution documents, like have clear reference to DETnet work, preferably if there are requirements which are clearly listed for the protocols, it will be easier for us to match those requirements into the extensions that we are developing in PSAP. And I see that you have documents in Spring and IDR as well, so that will help you also to make sure that things are aligned. So from the start, follow that process. That would be quite helpful. And also the terminology, be very clear with the terminology. Refer terms which are defined in DETnet documents so that there are no confusion, especially for folks like who are new to DETnet and who want to make sure that, like, we can still review the DETnet work for PSAP easily. So do help us to do this nicely. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruv.
Okay, let me bring in the next presentation. Vijay, let me give you slide control.
Okay.
You should have slide control now.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Hello everyone. This is Zhang Li from Huawei. We did a PCP extension for enhanced DataNet. The deterministic network architecture is described in RFC 8655. The DataNet provides the capability to carry specified data follows with extremely low data loss rates and bounded end-to-end latency with a network domain. RFC 5440 describes the path communication element patch for communications between a path communication client and with a path communication element, or between two path communication elements. PCP defines the interaction and the data format of path communication requests and path communication replies between PCC and PCE. Draft VGG DataNet enhanced data plan enhanced the DataNet data plan by introducing bounded latency information, which facilitates DataNet transit nodes to guarantee the bounded latency transmission in data plan. Based on that, draft Spring SR enhanced DataNet defines how to leverage segment routing and segment routing over IPv6 to implement bounded latency. So this document describes the PCP extensions for bounded latency path computation. It introduces how to transmit bounded latency information between the PCC and the PCE to guarantee the bounded latency transmission in control plane. This is the overview of the related drafts. We have two enhanced DataNet draft for the data plan and 4 drafts for the control plan. This is the summary of the extensions. For the open object, the bounded latency capability TLV is extended to negotiate the capability of bounded latency. The BLI type TLV is extended to the RP object to specify the type and format of the BLI that PCC desires. We define the traffic model object to describe the features of the DataNet flow for which the path is to be calculated. And the BLI object is newly defined to indicate the bounded latency information of the contested path. We define 2 kinds of BLI TLV. One is the BLI list TLV used in the case when all of the nodes in the ERO desire different BLI values. And another is the shared BLI TLV used when all of the nodes the ERO desires the same BLI value. The last, we extend the SR policy to carry BLI list TLV and share the BLI TLV with the connected path. We defined the bounded latency capability TLV to advertise the support of bounded latency features in open object. It contains the type flag and the format flag to indicate which kinds of BLI type and format the speaker supports. And the BLI type TLV is defined for the RP object when the PCC needed to request a bounded latency computation. It must include the BLI type TLV in the RP object in PC request message to specify the type and the format of the BLI that PCC desires. Another traffic model object is operational in PC request a message and user to specify the traffic model for bounded latency path computation. This traffic model object contains a set of fields used to specify the traffic features. With this traffic features, the PCE can calculate the bounded latency for the traffic, and then the result will be a constraint for the PCE's path computation. So how to carry the bounded latency with a connected path? We defined the BL object to indicate the requirement and resource allocation for the bounded latency path in the PC reply message. The BLI object body has a variable length and many and may contain TLVs for different kinds of BLI. When all of the nodes in the ERL request a different BLI to guarantee bounded latency, a BLI list is defined. And and when all of the nodes in ERL request the same BLI to guarantee bounded latency, the shared BLI TLV is defined. A shared BLI can be used for all of the nodes. When the connected path is delivered by SR policy, the SR policy also needs to carry the associated bounded latency information. So when all of the nodes in the explicit path indicated by the segment list request a different BLI to guarantee bounded latency, a BLI list TLV is needed to be carried by SR policy. And when all of the nodes in the explicit path indicated by the segment list request the same BLI to guarantee bounded latency, a shared BLI TLV is needed to be carried with SR policy. So the next step, we are welcome to discuss on main list, and the content of this draft will keep along with the progress in DataNet. Okay, thanks for listening. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any comments?
Yeah.
All the comments which were given for the previous presentation, I think, apply to this one as well. And one example of like why requirements would be very helpful would be like when you were presenting in the DetNet working group, I saw that there was mentioning that there could be multiple BLIs that would be needed for each hop. But in the current TLV that we have is like we have one BLI for one hop. So I don't see a case for like multiple BLI types to be included. So I think like start with the requirements so that requirements are clear, and then we can map them clearly to how to encode them in PSET.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think let's move to the last presentation. I don't see any other person queuing in. Let me give you slide control. You should have it.
Okay, thank you, Doof. This is about the PSAP extension for NRPID. Let's first do the quick recap. The PCT constraint draft has been proposed and presented during last 2 years. It proposed a set of constraints for PSAP with the network information, such as FAID, color, source protocol ID, multi-topology ID, application ID, slice ID, and now it has been replaced or merged into 4 drafts. So the current printing presenting draft has replaced the T constraints and proposed the slice related constraint with the terminology, changing from the slice ID TLV to NRP ID TLV. This draft is mainly about the NRP ID as per the IETF's NSIP MPL's NRP identifier indicates an identifier that is globally unique within an NRP domain, and that can be used in the control and the management plane to identify the resources associated with the NRP. So this document proposes a set of extensions for PSAP to support the identifier of network resource partition as the constraint of network slicing during path computation. So for the PSAP extension, we propose the NRP TLV. It can be used to identify the slice and the network resource and reviewed as constraints over network slicing when PC is deployed. The PC may maintain network resources per path and the NRP state within the resource pool identified by NRP ID. So the NRP ID TLV should be carried in PSAP messages such as the PC require message, PC initial message, and the PC update message. So the NRP ID TLV is optional and defined to carry the slice specific constraint. The definition is the same with the NRP ID as the IETFs and NSIP MPLs. So last step, we also thank the suggestions from Dhruv in the mailing list. The NRP capability would be added in open message in next version, and we will make clarification for the past computation with NRP ID constraint and add reference to IGP extensions for NRP as per the LSR Spring NRP draft. So comments and discussions are very welcome. Thank you.
I see Jane Q. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I just like to mention that there is a similar draft called PSAP VTN extensions, which covers both the capability part and the LSPA extensions. And currently, there are several set of the control plane drafts on the network slicing related extensions. This is just one of them, including the IGPA and the BGP, BGPRS. All these drafts may need to be coordinated in the future. And since we have some consensus in the TS working group on the terminology, within the coordination seems possible, and we're open to that. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. First, as I mentioned just now, we proposed the draft very early, and I think second, the difference between VPN Plus and NRP, which is up to the TS working group. We also very glad to discuss with you to progress this work. Maybe we could discuss offline on the mailing list or celebrate with you. Maybe we can collaborate with you to progress this piece of work. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, and that would be my comment as well. I think having a single document for the working group to look at would always be much easier to process, and most of the features are exactly the same, open and the ID inside an NSPA object. So I urge the authors to work together. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this document or anything else Otherwise, we'll give you back 10 minutes. I don't see anybody coming to the queue. Julian, would you like to close the meeting?
Yeah, sure. But thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for everyone all around the world who may be there at various times. I don't know, Drev, what time it is on your side, but yeah. So thank you for being there, and thank you everyone for contributing. Let's talk on the mailing list and hopefully see you face to face in London.
Yes. Hope to see you
Thank you,
all in
Harry.
London. Yeah, thanks, Hari, for the minutes. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Take care.